I don't hear it.
Good evening. Thank you for tuning into the Reloading podcast. Albeit a little late, unfortunately. Sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties. But we're here now, and Jim Fleming and I are going to talk about crimping tonight, and we're also going to kind of go through the basics of making a dummy round because it's one of those things that not everybody realizes how to know. Realizes how to do. So it.
We are rather frazzled, folks. That's why I'm laughing about Mike. We're both so stressed out, it isn't funny.
Yeah, we started normally like we would, but unfortunately we had a freeze up on one end, and then all of a sudden we couldn't get both of us back into the Hangout, so we had to shut it down. And then Google was nice enough, because we didn't start it at the time we said we were going to, change the date on us, and so when I was sending Jim invitations, they weren't showing up. So there's a little note for you, anybody that hosts a Google Hangout on air. If it goes past the time you said you're going to start it, it automatically defaults to the next day. So, yeah, when you go to send invites out, they won't show up. So, well, Jim, what'd you do in firearms this week?
Oh, a lot of things. I actually got some ammunition this week, some 22 rimfire ammunition. After a 2-year dry spell, I got 2,000 rounds, 2,100 rounds of Remington Golden Bullet over at the brand new Field and Stream store off of Interchange Road in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Ah. Well, I bought some ammo this week. It hasn't come in yet, but I bought it from Palmetto State Armory. Was running a sale on the 120 packs of 223 for $39.99. So I'm waiting for that to show up, and then I'm going to go unload that so I can reload it, because that's the fun part. Other than that, really didn't do a lot this week. Kind of my last week of working nights, so I had kind of a goofy schedule all week. But starting tomorrow, I'm working days, so that's going to give me a little more time at night to go shooting. We're planning on doing that today, but unfortunately with 20-plus mile-an-hour winds, that kind of puts a cramp in your style of a shooting trap with two youngsters.
Yep.
For me, it would have been fun because it would have been a challenge. But unfortunately for my sons, they probably wouldn't have had much fun because they wouldn't have hit anything. So
I hear you. As I said in the reloading room on Facebook, I actually quit working on the bullet swaging press because I was about to start doing the podcast with you. But I've actually made some progress today on the bullet swaging press.
Awesome.
Come to find out, running parts that fit together very closely, they don't like to be painted.
Yep.
Yeah, paint's not a lubricant. Paint is no lubricant. But go ahead, please.
So, yeah, I've got a couple friends that have found that out the hard way on different things, that, yeah, paint doesn't make a good lubricant at all. So, we are going to talk about crimping. We both realize, to all of you out there that are experienced reloaders, that yes, this is one of those topics. So we fully and absolutely expect comments on this, and we welcome them. We want to let you know that, crimping is important for accuracy. If you are a bench rest shooter or something along that lines, where you're trying to really get precise, if you're reloading for practice, you're reloading lots of rounds for just basically plinking, no. It doesn't make a difference. But when you're actually precision shooting, or even on your hunting loads, where you're looking to get consistency and you're looking to get type groups, anytime you're looking to get sub-MOA or anything more than that, crimping is pretty much a must, in my opinion. And yes, I know there are people out there who will disagree, but that's kind of what you get with firearms, is no matter what you're talking about, usually everybody's got at least two different opinions on it. So, right, Jim?
And I totally disagree with you about the precision of crimping. What we're seeing here is one of my famous 357 rounds with a 200 grain bullet. This is a handgun round, and I do have this very well crimped. I'm not real sure. I don't want to blur out. But if you that's a crimp from a Dillon 357 die.
Okay.
All right. Now that's
That's
handgun
just
ammo. Now precision on rifle ammunition, I do disagree with you on the crimping issue. But again, that's I'm not about to start an argument on the air.
Well, no, but like I said, everybody's got their own opinions. All the most of your factory dies, like I know for fact Lee's and RCBS's have a crimp that's built into them. But there also is different style crimpings. That's kind of one of the things we're going to try and show today, is the difference between them. Unfortunately, I only have Lee dies to show, so that's kind of what we're going to be going off of, is the standard Lee bullet seating and crimping die versus the factory crimp die. The differences between and what the benefits are. With crimping, when I'm hand loading ammunition for handgun, I don't usually put a serious crimp on it. For tonight's demonstration, I'm going to have lead, but I don't have currently a way to flare the case. So, Jim, unless you have a redneck idea on that, I'm going to be just sacrificing a couple bullets anyway to make dummy rounds, but unless you have a redneck way to flare the case, which I'm all open to.
Do you have anything like a countersink?
No.
What about a wooden dowel rod, like a large pencil? I mean, I'm talking like large, like bigger than your finger, that sort of thing. Where you could just gently take and tap it, the point of the tapered pencil into the mouth of the case to give you a little bit of crimp or a little bit of flare.
No, that's the same size. No, that's not going to work.
No, carpenter's pencil won't work. And you can't use a Sharpie or something like that. They're not hard enough to take and move the brass.
No. Aha. That might work.
If you can't do it by hand as you're trying to do, you might have to take a mallet and very lightly tap it until it flares.
Yeah, well, the only problem with using a needle nose is it's going to oblong the case.
Right.
So that didn't work. I don't think I have anything.
This is what we get for being prepared.
Well, I was more concerned about the 308, and then we had all the technical problems, so anyway. Yeah. So I guess, well, it really doesn't matter, honestly, since the bullets aren't going to ever be fired anyway. If I shave them a little bit, it's not going to make a difference. So just remember, though, folks, when you are loading lead bullets, flaring the case is a must. Like I'd said in a previous episode, this was actually the first time I was going to be loading lead bullets, and I didn't realize that until after I'd loaded some of them. So, but just for future, you definitely want to flare that case mouth, as Jim was talking about when we were talking about bullet seating, to make sure that absolutely doesn't shave the lead off, because that'll affect your accuracy. Plus, it increases the amount of leading in the barrel, because instead of that lead being smooth, now there's some sharp edges that can catch on the lands and grooves. Yes, it's not going to be a lot, but it does. Every extra little bit of lead on your barrel does not help with accuracy and with bullet flow. So first things first. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make up some dummy rounds. Dummy rounds, all you need is your
Well, I've got a few rounds here, Mike. Some are crimped and some are uncrimped.
Okay.
While you're doing that, instead of just putting out dead air, why don't we do that?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and you can talk to the folks while we're doing this.
First thing I want to do is give a shout out to my good friend, and I mean good friend, Jason Trumbo. He's actually watching us.
Hello, Jason. Thanks for tuning in again. Good to know we didn't scare you off the first time.
Yep. No, actually, Jason, as you know, Mike, Jason was very instrumental in helping us figure out what the technical issue was.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, what I've got here in front of the camera, and forgive the poor lighting, if I come in out of focus or something like that, forgive me. Okay, now what this is a factory round 5.56. Okay, and you can see the case mouth is actually tapered. It appears to be tapered into the candelore. And it is tapered to a point, but they've actually moved the metal with what's called a stab crimp. Now, I know that's kind of a weird term, but that's exactly how they do it. This is around a 5.56, and I don't know the head stamp. It's TW73. But anyway, the way a stab crimp works is it comes in from the side. In the factory, it comes in from the side of the casing. I'll get a pencil. Excuse me. They come in from the side like so with a yoke of sorts. I know my fingers are really, really helpful, but it's like they come in from the side with a little cup or a yoke that goes around this periphery of the bullet, and they actually move the metal sideways directly into the candelore. Now, most of us, especially those folks that are in the reloading room, have a lot of experience with trying to take and shove the cartridge up into the die, like so, up into the die like that. I'm not coming off screen, and what happens is they put so much pressure downward on that corner right there that it transfers down to this corner of the shoulder. And what will happen is this shoulder will bulge out like so. And that's why using RCBS, Lee, Hornaday, Dillon, Redding, whoever, when you take and try to do a vertical crimp like that up into the die, you wind up over crimping, and the metal doesn't move in the direction you really want it to in the first place. And it's just like you can't chamber your cartridge simply because the darn thing won't fit your gun anymore. It won't fit the chamber. And why is that? Because that little damn shoulder right there that I'm touching, that shoulder on the 5.56 round or the 243 or whatever, Mike, you're making me crazy. But anyway, that shoulder right there, it just simply bulges outward and it will not fit the chamber. And that is around a factory 5.56. It's a military ball round. But now let's take and change to a fresh round I just reloaded the other day. And this is a round of, what is it? 243 Winchester. I don't know if you can make that out or not. 243 Winchester, Federal cartridge, and I can't tell if it's reversed or not. It looks like it's reversed to me, but I don't know. But anyway, you notice too, I have it made up in such a way that I have a good bit of the candelore showing. This is simply where the factory OAL was set, and from here to there, and I did not try to make any attempt to do any crimping. Mike and I disagreed, as friends do tend to, simply because I don't think that trying to crimp factory ammo, or my reloads rather, to get any kind of precision with that crimping die or the crimping shoulder in the bullet seating die, I don't think it's going to give me the consistent results. Now, I will not argue about the Lee factory crimp die because I have a few of those and they work well. I have a factory crimp die on 357. I think I have it on 3030, and I know I have it on 308. And it works rather well, but I don't care to take and crimp in my bullet seating die. I just assume, even for my semi-automatics, my AR, my Mini 14, I simply put this ammunition in the gun, in the weapon, in the firearm, uncrimped. And I never have any problems with the rattle bang or the slam bang. I never have any problems with bullet setback or the bullet going into the cartridge too much. Are you ready, Mike?
All right. What I've got here is set up on the camera here. I have already deprimed the cases. And what Lee has in this little kit that I got for 40 is 4 different dies. I'll show them to you here as soon as I unlock the camera. There we go. Okay, so we've got the 4 dies, and we'll start here. This one here is the one that Jim was just talking about with the factory crimp die. This one here is designed, as you can see, so they turn it. It's hollow, so this one's for putting powder right through, so you can charge your case through the die as you're setting the bullet. You can bleh. It's a powder through expanding die. So what it does is it sizes the neck and also does the powder filling at the same time. Here's your standard carbide sizing die with your decapper pin. And then here is your bullet and seat feed die. Bullet, seat, and feed die. This is the one that most of the time I'm going to use unless I'm trying for real precision. This one does have a crimp on it. So when I was talking about not crimping earlier, I was kind of not necessarily completely accurate. It does put a crimp on the bullet. It does not put the factory crimp on it. And I'll show you the difference between those. Now, with the dies, what you want to do is you want to put your ram all the way up, turn your die down, and there. Now you can kind of see the whole thing. Now, there's still a gap, so what you got to do is on the Lees, they've got the jam nut here. I can get my hands out of the way. So you got to turn that jam nut so you can turn this all the way down. So you want it so it actually touches the ram. And you can tell that it's touching the ram because there's no space here and then there's a little space here. What you want to do then is, while you're setting this up, is, hang on just a second, folks. Sorry about that. I didn't think you wanted me to cough in your ear. Okay. Once you've got everything else done, you got your case charged and everything, what you're going to do is you're going to turn this all the way till it touch. Then you are going to back it out 3 full turns. Where'd my Sharpie go? Oops. So what you can do is you can take your little Sharpie or whatever you want to use, and you can make a mark. So that way you have an indexing mark. Eventually on these, I'm actually going to get out my engraver and engrave them all. So I have an indexing mark on the nut, because then you can adjust the nut. So that's 2 full turns, and that's 3 full turns. So now, as you'll see, the Sharpie does come off after a while, or permanent marker, whatever you want to call. So you get it set and lock it down. All right, now bullet adjustment, bullet depth is by turning this knob on the top here. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your case. Now this one here, because I'm making a dummy round, has no primer.
No powder, no primer.
And this is a 40 Smith & Wesson. As you can see all the way through and see the pink from my hand. No powder, no primer. In fact, I don't even have any powder or primers out here. I want to make sure that there's no chance that I'm going to load this up as a charged case, because this is specifically made for demonstration purposes. So what I'll do is...
It's a tool.
Yep. Pretty much every time every time I start reloading a new load or a new caliber, I'm going to make a couple dummy rounds. The nice thing they come in advantage for is checking your seating depth, make sure they use for magazines, stuff like that. I'm going to set the lead on here. Now, because I don't have anything to flare the case mouth with, it is going to shave off some of the lead. What you'll do is you'll actually run this up and then push it snug, and you'll see it seats the bullet. Sometimes you get lucky and you get it seated where you want it.
Okay, Mike, let it focus because it's
Yep,
no.
there we go.
Thank you, sir. Period. Personally, I would think you'd want to seat that one a little bit deeper, just to get the shoulder closer to the case mouth. But again, you'll check your OEL and all that.
Yeah, what I've got right here is I've actually got a factory loaded Winchester white box case,
Yes,
putting
sir.
right next to it. So as soon as the camera focuses.
It looks like, well, I guess it looks like I'm all wet because now it looks like the lead bolt's a tad shorter.
They're about even.
Looks good.
So, and that's just one of those you get lucky, and then every once in a while. Now, one of the things you want to do is once you get to that top, to get that crimp, you'll actually push a little extra pressure on your ram. Now that's only if you've got it set up to crimp. This one actually, because of the way I had the bullets set, isn't crimping. What you can do is adjust this.
That would be to adjust the die body, am I right, Mike? Remember, you said that the aluminum knob on top, top is for changing the depth.
Yep. So what you want to do is just loosen the whole thing and then turn. Sometimes with the lead dies, you can actually just turn the center, but then that'll get that up there. Not only did I seat the bullet a little farther, but also put a little crimp in it. Let me see if we can get that focused in there. You can kind of see the crimp.
It looks like the brass is starting to roll into the wall of the bullet. Am I right?
Yeah. What you can see is you can see the little you can see the shine on the brass.
Right. All right.
That's what indicates that you've actually got a crimp. Now, because that also pushed that bullet down, then I'm going to turn that back out a bit. And actually, I wonder. No. I had a thought, but then it didn't work, so.
I hope you weren't going to try to tap that bullet in nose first.
No.
Good.
No,
we both know that would do nothing but jam up.
Yep. Okay, so since these are dummy rounds, I just took my needle nose and flared it a little bit. It's not a lot of flare, just a little bit, so the bullet seats in a little better. Push this up, and then when you get to the top, you'll feel resistance. That's when you give it that little extra push, and then that'll crimp it. And this one's a lot cleaner. Just a little difference I made with, you can see how important flaring is. You don't see all the lead shavings on it, but you can see that shine on the top. With the lead, it kind of really, double shines, so you can't really tell a lot of the difference. But just right there, you can see that little shine of brass.
I see it. I see it. About 7 to 8 thousandths on the mouth of the case is actually burnished. I could see it.
Yep.
I'm having terrible time
now
with focus, but I could see what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's just that last little smidge that actually does the crimping on there.
Now, Mike, excuse me, sir, but you're using you're not using the Lee factory crimp die. You're using your regular bullet seating die with just a taper crimp on it, correct?
Yes. That was the first two, and now the next one, I'm just going to seat the bullet. So I'm just going to go till the resistance stops, pull it back out, make sure my bullet's seated where I want it, and then I'm going to do the same thing with one more.
Well, you notice, folks, Mike has not bothered to use calipers to check his length. He knows that either he has this preset or he will check it against the magazine. That's really what sets up your overall length in semi-automatic cartridges like that, is the length of the magazine, or the length required to fit inside the magazine.
Right. I actually did have this set before from loading up some 40 Smith & Wesson rounds, so yeah, I kind of had that cheated, but also the fact that, yeah, I'm not checking the caliper, so Usually I'd have a magazine sitting here, and then you can just slap one in, make sure. That's the beautiful thing about the dummy rounds, is that's what they're for, is actually checking that fit without having to worry about live round in the chamber, live round in the magazine, or anything like that. You know that there is no way these are going to go off because there is no primer, there is no powder to ignite. The other thing is, if you have a cartridge that Lee doesn't have a factory crimp die for, and you want a factory crimp die, you can make up a dummy round to the length that you need it, send it to Lee, and they will make a factory crimp die for it.
Something else that just occurred to me, you were talking about using a portion of your gun, in this case the magazine, to check the overall length and make sure they fit into it. Well, the other thing is, too, I'm a big advocate of using the barrel itself of my semi-automatic handgun to check the overall length, check to make sure the bullet fits well, make sure the case fits well inside the chamber, and the bullet drops into the rifling. But this is what the beauty of the dummy round is. You could simply create a bullet seating gauge, a cartridge gauge, whatever, and all you have to do is simply use the barrel of your 1911. Mike, if you don't mind, I'm going to take and go grab a gun and take it apart. And I'm going to, I'm going to take and you'll have to cover me for a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm going to actually go get a gun and show you exactly what I'm talking about. So this also demonstrates the value of the crimping and the way of the drop-in cartridge gauge.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
I'll just keep.
You'll see me come back.
All right, gang. So while Jim's off doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the factory crimp die. Now, with this one, kind of show you the difference between the two if I can. I might need a flashlight here, so hang on a second. Now, hang on, this isn't as well as I planned, so. Okay, so as soon as these focus in, what you can see, hopefully, I don't know how well it's going to show up, is this one here that I'm shining the light on now has a lot deeper set to it than your regular bullet seating die. And the reason for that is this one is your factory crimp die. Its only purpose is to put a crimp on the cartridge. That's the only purpose for it. It doesn't do anything else. So you don't need to reseat the bullet. The bullet's already seated. Now to set this one up, what you do is, like most of your setting up your dies, put your ram up, pull it down, crank it down until it hits the shell holder, and then what you want to do is back out your, tighten it down. Yeah. And it's best to do that with the ram. That way you don't turn it down too far and screw this all up. So once you get that set, then you tighten that down. You put your loaded case, and this is why the dummy rounds are huge. Why you need these is, if you're going to factory crimp, you need a dummy round to be able to set this die up so it's set up right. Because what you're actually going to do is you're going to put the loaded round up in it, and then you need to adjust this. You back this off, and so what you do is then you go down until you feel it touch the case, and you'll feel it stop. Or the resistance will increase right there. And then you're going to move the die, the cartridge slightly out of the die. And then the other thing and then what you want to do is you can turn it a half turn for a light crimp or a full turn for a heavy crimp. Now, the other thing that this die does is it post sizes the case. So what it actually does is it reforms that case to the correct size, so that way its outside size of the case is actually going to fit in with your chamber without any issues. Now this one here, as I hold up, you can see there's a definite difference in the crimp. The advantage of this crimp over the other crimp, which I'll hold them side by side, is it's a lot more pronounced.
Mike, hold it up a little higher if you don't mind, sir. Thank you. Perfect. No, a little too low. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good.
Okay, so you can see the one is a more pronounced crimp. It actually covers a little more of the case. That's the factory crimp. The advantage of the factory crimp, the single biggest advantage of the factory crimp, is you now have a consistent pressure applied to the bullet. You just run the ram all the way up, and it applies a consistent pressure. It doesn't matter how much pressure you put on the ram, as long as you run that full stroke, it puts the exact same pressure onto that bullet every single time unless you adjust this. So therefore, every time you run that up and push that ram all the way, it's going to give you a consistent crimp, which allows you to have consistent pressure required before the bullet starts moving out of the case. What this does is it helps increase your accuracy by removing another variable. If you don't crimp, or you use the regular crimping bullet seating and crimping die, you may have one that requires, say, 35,000 CUP to get the bullet start moving, and because it's tighter, and another one only needs 31,000 before the bullet starts moving. So now you've got the bullet moving at different pressures. When that bullet starts moving down the barrel, some of that powder that you need burned to get that maximum velocity isn't burned. And it burns out the end of the barrel instead, because instead of burning in the cartridge to push the bullet out, it's now coming out with all the gases and everything, and now you've got a big fireball out the end of your barrel because you burned up some of the powder in air instead of burning it up in the chamber where you needed it. That's kind of the basic overall reasoning for the factory crimp. And the reason they call it a factory crimp is because if you look at your factory ammunition, it actually has, this is our good old Winchester white box.
Hey, try to come in a little closer, Mike. See if because I noticed the camera likes to focus a little bit. Okay, you could just hold that. That was about where you were a while ago, but it does want to focus now.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Someday I'll have a really good camera that we won't have this problem with, but you know, that's when we're both rich and famous. So.
Hey,
and all we do is reload.
Well, you know what? When we're rich and famous, we'll wind up with both of us facing the same camera.
Yeah, exactly. A nice studio and everything.
Exactly.
And a beautiful gun range. So, anyway, and if anybody wants to donate to that cause, no, I'm just kidding.
I'm not. All right, but anyway.
So, all right.
Is it okay if I jump in here?
Yep. Let me unlock the camera. And we'll lock it on you. And while you're doing that, I'm going to switch out dies.
All right. Well, anyway, what I was talking about a while ago, this is a 1911 magazine. This is a round of Federal Hydroshock, factory ammo and all that. But the important part I want you to see is actually, here I go again, reaching over the camera, is down inside here. Not up here. But down inside here, the next round is a round of Remington Golden Saber. But if you notice in there, right there, that's the best I could point it out. But inside there, you notice there's probably 45, maybe 60 thousandths of clearance between the nose of the bullet and the inner wall of the magazine. There, that's about the best shot I can give you. Right there. Hopefully that's going to focus. But anyway, if you notice that black spot right there, the blank spot is actually what it is. There's a good bit of space between, or a certain amount of required space between the wall of the bullet, or nose of the bullet, and the inner wall of the magazine. All right, now, that's what actually dictates your setup on the overall length of your semi-automatic handgun rounds. However, the second part of what Mike was talking about, and so have I been, is, of course, the factory crimp. This is another round of Remington Factory Golden Saber and all that sort of thing. But what I was talking to Mike about a while ago is this is a barrel off my 1911. Yeah, it's a little dirty. But anyway, you can see, because it's a barrel, you know darn good and well it's not an assembled gun. However, This is a round, loaded factory round. Primer, powder inside, bullet and all that. But this is not assembled gun, so there's no danger. Besides that, Mike and I are working alone individually. Our connection is through the net. I couldn't shoot him if I had to. He's in Wisconsin. I'm in Pennsylvania. Ah. But anyway, so the idea is there's no safety issue. Now, what I'm about to do is simply drop this round, clunk, I love that sound, into the chamber of the gun. And I'll just give myself a straight edge here. And you notice that now, I'll back off a little bit. When I take and set my straight edge on both the barrel and the cartridge, I notice that there's about 3 to 5 thousandths clearance between the tail end of the barrel right here. By the tail end of the barrel, this is actually what meets the breech face. I'm talking about this part right here where my pen is touching. Yep. And I'll drop around it. And you notice there's a little tiny bit. Let me come out. You should see it now. A little bit of difference between the height of the two parts. That's perfectly acceptable. Matter of fact, you need to have that for the proper working of the gun. That's why I said 3 to 5 thousandths height difference. But this is actually it's a factory round. It's supposed to be perfect. But Mike can do the same thing with his G22 or whatever kind of glove, whatever he has in the 40 S&W. And we can all do the same thing. But this is the best factory cartridge gauge there is, right there. The barrel itself of your gun.
Yep. Yes, indeed.
Okay.
And you know, like we were saying, Jim took that all apart, pulled the barrel out. This is another safety issue. It's just like Jim was saying, you know, I'm in Wisconsin, he's in Pennsylvania. Unless he's got a 50 BMG and a heck of an arc, he's not going to be able to get me. And by heck of an arc, I'm pretty much thinking that'd be like an outer space shot. So, but
ICBM. I'm going to send you an ICBM next week, Mike.
Sweet. Make sure it's got some cash in it, would you? And some of those 22s you got.
Yeah. 2,100 rounds of Remington Golden Bullet.
You betcha.
The new Field and Stream store.
Cool. I'm going to have a Cabela's about 1,000 yards from me in about a year, so that's going to be nice.
Yep. If you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and reassemble my gun.
All right. You do that. What I just did was resized for 308 brass now, because now we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to kind of do two things at once here. I'm going to show bullet seating depth on two different grains of bullet. And then I'm also going to answer a viewer question that he emailed me earlier in the week. That gentleman's name is Adam. We went back and forth a couple times to kind of try and figure out exactly what it's asking, because I thought he was asking one thing, he was asking another. So what Adam's question is, will changing your bullet weight affect accuracy? And that is a yes and no question. So as one of the reasons that it does or does not is because of the fact that, as most experienced reloaders know, changing any of the variables in the steps in the system will affect accuracy. Now, he's going from a 150 grain to 165 grain in 308. It may not, because the problem is each rifle likes their own little specific recipe, and when you're hand loading, that's what the idea is. You're tuning for the rifle. When I went from 125 grain to 150 grain, I actually wound up trying a couple of different powder options before I found one that was going to give me the same style accuracy. One of the things you can do when you're switching grains is try and stay within the same percentile of your powder range between your minimum load, your max load. So if you went and split the difference, and that's your best load, your most accurate load that gives you your sub MOA at 100 yards or sub half MOA, whatever the case may be, then it's a pretty good idea to start right around that same percentage when you get up to the next step. So now what we're going to do is, for this one, this is the what they call the dead length seating die. And so we're going to turn it in till it touches the shell holder. And then on this particular one, it's a quarter of a turn more. And then you're going to lock it down. This one also is going to adjust your bullet seating depth. And then, now the thing with this also is this one doesn't necessarily have a true crimp on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up one at 110 and one of 155 and show you kind of the difference between the two bullets first. What I was the first part of Adam's question was, does it bullet seating depth change accuracy? Which, yes and no, but when you're going from different grains, oops, I suppose I shouldn't unlock the camera first. Okay, now that you can see what I'm doing. Now you'll notice one is considerably longer than the other. What happens when they change your grain weight in your bullets is typically your length from your tip to your shoulder is going to be the same. It's the base where they add the extra material. So this one here is 110, this one's 150. So that's the big changes in the base. So what that's going to do is it's not going to affect as far as what part of Adam's question was, is by going through different grain weight, is that going to change where it sits in regards to the lands and grooves on the rifling? And if you are setting your seating die at the same depth for both cartridges, no, it's not. It is going to change how deep the bullet sits in the case. And once again, these are all dummies. You can see all the way through. No primer, no powder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the 110 grain. And we'll slide that up and see where it seats at. So that one there, you can see where it's seated at.
You notice, so folks, there's a good bit of there's a little bit of straight wall above the mouth of the case, but below the ogive shoulder of the bullet.
Yep. Now I'm going to take another, and once again, no primer, no powder. And this time, I'm going to take my 150 grain. And the nice thing is you can see on the boat, this one's got a nice boat tail to it, and it's got a nice bevel. That really helps in seating. Slides in and sits in a little better, doesn't fall over. And then I'm going to run that up and seat that one also. And then I can take the two and set them next to each other. And looking at them,
they look identical, but they're not.
Exactly. That's the thing, is they look identical, but there's definitely different weights. So this one here is the 110, and this one here is the 155.
Mike, suggestion for you, for your dummy rounds, mark them right now with a Sharpie. 110, 150. Oh yeah, because you and I both know, if you don't, you lay it down, you walk away, 30 seconds later, you're going to have it confused.
Oh yeah. The nice thing is there's enough of a weight difference so you can tell. But yeah, it's definitely, especially if you're going to walk away and leave them for a while. I gotta find a Sharpie that's fine enough though. There we go. So, I mean, there is definitely a weight difference between the two of them, so you can tell.
Yes, sir. I agree.
But Yeah, definitely want to label them. And all you may need to do is just something like that. So you put a little black mark so you know which one's which. All right. So that answers the first part of the question, is different weight bullets, at least in rifle. But as you also know from was it last episode when you had the Leadcast, or was it 2 ago? I can't remember.
What was your question, Mike?
When you were showing off your favorite 357 Leadcast, was that last episode?
Right, here's one.
Yep.
Are you talking about the bullet?
When you had just the bullet?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I don't know which podcast it is. After a while, they all start to sound alike.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, it was 2 episodes ago. I'm sorry. My fault. It was episode 11, bullet seating. Jim had out his couple of different grain weights on lead bullets, and you can definitely see the difference in length. So that's this, and this does have, it does have like a little, it seats the bullets uniformly. It does put like a little, it doesn't really put a crimp on it at all. So that's why I got the factory crimp, which is right here. Now this factory crimp is set up a little differently than the pistol one. This is a older style, and it's set up a little differently. As you can see on this one, it's actually hollow and it's got a collet in it.
Right. The collet is what I was talking about. That's what creates that so-called stab crimp. Remember, the periphery of the bullet, what they do is they come together with two sides of a yoke like that, just like my fingers, and they actually jam.
Hang on a second, Jim.
The wall of the bullet.
Okay, do that demo again. The camera was locked, so.
Okay, sorry. What I was talking about is the yoke or the stab crimp. That they're actually machined out to be of the bullet diameter, maybe minus 15 thousandths. Anyway, it comes together like so, and it actually will take and create the 4 marks that Mike showed you in the bottom of that collet. But anyway, it comes together, and when it comes right down to the sides and the two sides meet like that, it makes a nice jam crimp or stab crimp in the wall of the bullet.
All right. So now, what I actually want to do, sorry about that, folks. I forgot to seat the other 2 bullets. All right. So now, on the 150 grain, you noticed it does have the cantilever on it. And so I actually want to, and the reason I know this is from previous loading experience, seating it so that cantilever actually is exposed is actually about the best for accuracy. It just happens to work out that way. It doesn't always work that way, but on this particular cartridge it happens to. But also I want to show you what it looks like on a on a crimped cartridge with the cantilever and without the cantilever. So on these, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tighten my die back down. The nice thing about the Lee lock rings is once you tighten that down, you use this to loosen and tighten instead of using the body of the die, and they're preset. So whatever you had it set at last is what it's set at now. So then I can put my brass in here. Once again, it's empty. So I can put my brass in here. I can put my bullet in. And then I want to turn this up because I want to change that bullet seating depth. Slide that up, seat the bullet. You're better if you're not sure how far down you want to go. If you can see this here, you can see the cantilever right at the top of the brass. You are better off starting too shallow than trying to go too deep, because if you go too deep, you can't pull the bullet back out without wrecking either the bullet or the case or having to start all over. So in this case, I backed it way off, and then I'm just going to slowly work my way until I get it where I want it. And it may take a couple times, and I'll show you each time. So you can see it moved a little more. And then I just keep adjusting. And this is one of those things that, you know, you could spend easily a half hour. Now, I'm not planning on spending that long on it because we don't need to. But with this, what you do, especially if you're trying to set it up so your bullet actually, the ogive shoulder is actually touching the rifling, you may spend half hour, 45 minutes going between the dummy round and the rifling, the dummy round and the rifling, dummy round and the rifling. And if you're not sure if it's hitting the rifling, what you can do is take and I wouldn't recommend a marker, but come up with something, you know, maybe a little bit of flour or something that's going to be able to clean out of that bore real easily, so that you can actually put it into the bore, and then when you put the bullet in, it'll actually leave some sort of mark on the bullet or on the cartridge, so you can tell if you're in far enough or not. So you get it seated where you want it, and as you can see now, you can just barely see the top of that cantilever, and that's where I want it at. So now I've got it set right, and like before, I'm going to take and mark it, because this is the 150 grain. That way I don't have to worry. Like Jim was saying, if you're doing this and you've got a couple of different rounds, that way you can check and save yourself the headache of trying to guess later, or throw it on a scale and hope you guess right. Seat the bullet, and we're good to go. And once again, you'll notice the two cases and the two overall lengths of the bullets. As soon as my camera focuses, come on, camera. Really? Come on. Moving closer. Anyway.
There.
Aha. Perfect.
Yeah, if you notice a bright ring, folks, directly under the mouth of the case. Well, it's actually a dark ring. That's the beauty of the factory crimp. And that's what the purpose of the cantilever is to create a reduction in the diameter of the shank of the bullet to allow the brass to have somewhere to go without damaging the bullet.
Okay, so you can see that these are both set the same. Now, I'm going to take the bullet seating die out, and I'm going to put the factory crimp die in. And you saw that it had the dark rings there, which is typical. You get a little bit of cleaning up when you size it, but you're not going to get that real clean look until you actually get to the rifle crimp die. Now,
right. Thank you, Mike.
With the factory crimp die, it doesn't seat the bullet, so don't worry about trying to adjust your bullet depth. It's not going to. What you do want to do is, just like everything else, touch the shell holder, and then once you get you touching your shell holder, you go ahead and drop your ram out of the way and go ahead and do your half turn for the light crimp.
Another shortcut for what you to take in once Mike turns it in, a half turn like that. What you could do to lock that die in place while you're turning the lock nut is simply raise your ram up, and that'll actually hold it and jam it in place much stronger than Mike's fingers can. And you just simply lock up the flat, put your wrench on or whatever you have, and adjust the lock nut that way.
Yep, that works a lot better. I have done that a few times by myself, so I know that my fingers actually can hold it. But if you know, Jim's idea is actually the way better way to do it. So you run your bullet, you run your ram up.
If you notice, folks, hold it, Mike. Hold that place. If you notice, right, you just barely can see the red tip of the bullet, the projectile, sticking up through the factory crimp die.
Yep. What I'm actually going to do here, after I pick the cartridge up that rolled onto the floor, is I'm going to try and hold the webcam over, and so everybody can. Oh, I guess we're out of room. As you can see, the bullet is sticking up. Whoa.
Yep, too far.
Okay, let's see here.
If you can get it to focus, that'll be perfect. Too far down from the camera's perspective.
Well, you can kind of see what I'm trying to show here with the way the bullet comes up.
Sure thing.
It's
Now,
not
Mike,
really.
can you cycle the RAM for me? Oh, that's right. Can you tighten it? I want people to try to see the opening and closing in the slots of the collet. Yeah, I guess you can't see that. That's one thing about it, folks. We haven't gotten your donations yet on getting good studio equipment that can show such subtle variations. Right. I could see it, but I know what I'm looking for. I can see when Mike raises the RAM up, the slots that are running perpendicular to the axis of the bullet.
Aha!
Right, perfect.
Now you can see them open back up, folks.
Absolutely. I can
And
see it.
then you can see them close again.
Yes.
Those will get tighter and tighter as you run more pressure. That's what I wanted to kind of show you. So we'll put the camera back now and quit making everybody motion sick. And there we go. Okay, so that is a light crimp. And as you can see, there's a little ring. And then we'll do it on the other one too. And you just run it all the way down, and then you give it a little shove at the end. Your ram only goes so far, but it's just to give it the little end pressure. So that is a light crimp. If you have lead bullets, you want to use a light crimp. If you have...
You're off camera.
Sorry. I got to pay attention to what I'm doing instead of just talking. Hey. Okay. So.
Yeah, bring it in focus, Mike. Bring it in focus, please. There. Now you see the dark spot I was talking about.
Yep, and then
the 150 grain round, I can actually see where the collet has actually worked off the oxide down a little bit, please. I can actually see a little bit of difference in the shade of the brightness or the color of the dark spot, as it were.
Yep. Now, when I do the next set, which is the one that I've got actually set up for the cantilever, because I know I've got the cantilever there, I'm actually going to go a little stronger on my crimp. Also, because when I'm loading my precision rounds, I do want a little tighter crimp. To do that, what you have to do is you actually have to back it off just a hair to get that nut loose, and then you can loosen up your nut a bit. And you're actually going to do your reset all over again. Put your ram all the way up, tighten it down, and then you're going to move your ram out of the way, and you're going to do a full turn. I don't recommend doing any more than a full turn, because if you do, you're actually going to wind up crushing your bullet, and then it defeats the purpose. So there I've got my full turn, and tighten that down. And like Jim was saying, put your ram up, and you can hold your ram with one hand and then turn the nut with the other, and that'll get it really nice and secure. So then I've got my other two, and I'll show you the before on these. So as you can see, that's what they look like before. This one here doesn't have the cantilever. This is the 110. The other one does have the cantilever. You can see just a little bit of that showing. So now what I'll do is I'll slide that up, and once again you're going to give that push. And if I had the technology, you'd actually be able to see how the collet actually closes completely shut, whereas before there was still a little gap. So, and then this is what they look like afterwards. Let's bring them up, wait for it to focus. You can definitely see a difference where it's actually been
oh yeah,
smushed in. Now we'll bring in the other two. We'll bring in, and we'll put the 250 grains next to each other. And as soon as it focuses, you can clearly see a difference in, when you're looking at this edge, you can definitely see there's a difference in the brass. Whereas this one here, it's still pretty straight at the top of it. Whereas on this one, you can actually see the roll, where it rolls in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
and you can see the difference in the base of the crimp. So now, like we were saying, it didn't change the seating depth. So if you had it all set up before, so it would set up and hit your lands and grooves by changing your bullet weight, that's not going to affect that. You're still going to hit lands and grooves just like you did before. What it will do, though, depending on the recipe you use behind it, it may affect your accuracy. And then you're going to have to spend some time playing around until you find the right mix of powder and bullet weight. And you may find out that you can't get as accurate with 165 grain as you did with your 150. And so that may be a case of you either have to accept that and just realize that's going to be the case, or continue playing around, maybe try somebody else's 165 grain, maybe go to 168 grain. There's a lot of variables in reloading, and everything you do changes and affects everything that happens, whether it's a little stronger crimp, whether it's, you know, post-sizing. Now, the only thing with this factory crimp die that it doesn't do that the pistol one does, this one doesn't post-size the case. That's the only drawback. This one's an older rifle crimp die, so I don't know. I forgot to get a hold of Lee and find out if the newer ones actually have that capability built in, because I noticed the pistol ones do. But you can also just regularly you can pull your, what you can do is you can take this one here, your collet sizing die, and you can pull your decapping pin out, and then you use that as a post sizer also. The decapping pin, literally, you just pull your top off, and the decapping pin comes right out. Put it back together. The nice thing about this one is the only thing to adjust anything is the actual seating depth. So then you can put your die back into your press and do your post sizing if you want to do that. If you're looking for ultimate accuracy, that's kind of one of those steps that a lot of them do, is they will pre-size and post-size. As like we said in previous, everything you do, anytime you monkey with the case at all, especially when you push the bullet in, it's going to push the brass out a little bit. So by post-sizing it, it kind of returns that brass to the correct size and kind of helps increase your accuracy a little bit. Also, that way your bullets are all, your cases are going to be all uniform. So when you have that rifle crimp, you have that post-sizing, what it's going to do is it's going to be consistent expansion before that bullet starts moving. Consistent expansion means one more variable you removed in order to increase that accuracy.
Mike, what I was going to caution the folks about is they don't want to overjam that loaded cartridge in the sizing die too much without any sort of lubricant, because they'll wind up with something, a reloader's nightmare, and that would be a live round stuck in their sizing die. You know, they
Right.
want to take and make sure to use a little tiny bit, and I mean sparingly, use a little bit of lubricant right on between the wall of the cartridge and the wall of the die. If you get it jammed in there,
just like,
go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, just like when you're doing your pre-sizing, like Jim's saying, use your lubricant. For something like that, I probably am not going to use my one-shot because it doesn't allow me as much control over how much I'm using. For something like that, I'm going to probably grab either the leak sizing die that I've got, or the lube I've got, or the RCBS, something that's a liquid or a cream that's going to allow me to actually manually apply that to the case, because I don't want, like Jim's saying, you don't want a lot of lube, because that's going to affect how much that case compresses. But you do have to have some lube on there, otherwise, yeah, you're going to have reloader's worst nightmare.
Yep, loaded round stuck in your sizing die. I can't think of anything worse.
No.
Matter of fact, how would I go about removing that? Well, you could take and try driving the bullet downward through the top of the die but it's such a heavy jam up. I think I would just simply buy a new die and destroy or get rid of the hand grenade you just created.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really. The only thing you could do is if you had some sort of company that does bullet disposal, or you have some sort of say you got a gunsmith buddy that he has a device built for testing firearms where it seals it, kind of like what, if anybody's watched Mythbusters, they've got that big semi or that cargo shipping box that they've got modified, and that's where they do their test firing of their firearms in there. So it's completely enclosed, completely safe. If something blows up, nothing's going to get hurt. You could possibly come up with some sort of device to actually lock that die down into, say, a vise, and then trip the firing pin, or not trip the firing pin, but trigger the primer to actually push the bullet out. But something like that, you're talking a lot of time creating something like that.
No, we're getting into scaring people. We just soon not do that. Just make sure if you do the post sizing, make sure to use lubrication a little bit.
Yep.
Anyway.
Okay, so the other part of Adam's question was, will it change accuracy? Yes.
Absolutely.
It will change your accuracy. First off, it's going to definitely change point of impact. Even if you somehow generate the same pressures, you have a different weight projectile flying at a different speed, and it is going to change your point of impact. Now, if you are consistent with your load and you get lucky and come across the exact same, like I said, if 50% or halfway between the minimum and the maximum on that 150 grain is the sweet spot for that 150 grain load on that powder that you're using, start there and then go just a bit up and just a bit down. If the sweet spot isn't, again, that 50%, and you can play around, you may find out you have to completely change powders. That may be, if you're like most of us, you've got a bunch of different powders sitting around, so that may be not a real big deal to come across. If you don't, then see if you've got a friend and say, hey, I'm working up this load. Do you have, say, a couple grains of powder, or 100 grains or whatever, depending on how many loads you're going to try and work up, depending on what case size you're using and all that. Typically, 100 rounds isn't going to really get it done for 308, but for a pistol, that's, probably 20 rounds worth. So, Jim, have you come across that with your vast experience of reloading, where you've actually wound up and the same percentage in between the min and max actually winds up being the sweet spot again?
Well, generally speaking, in my experience, I have found the best accuracy at what I would call a 95% load. Considering the max load in your book would be 100%, and then they give you a minimum, considering that to be 90%. Usually halfway finds the sweet spot for me. However, it's interesting. This round of 243, minimum load in the powder I've got in it is 31.5 listed. It goes up to, I think, 37.5, 37.8. I don't remember. But the interesting thing about it is 0.2 of a grain above the minimum is the sweet spot for this particular round and that particular gun that's going in.
That's where your ladder loads are going to come in handy, is where you kind of start working up, and you can kind of tell with your ladder loads, it'll kind of give you an idea of what may be working better or not. Is theoretically in a ladder load, if everything works the way it's supposed to, you could literally have them stacked straight in a line, going right up. If something isn't working right, then you're going to notice it's going to be left or right of center, as well as up.
Speaking of ladder loads, right here, those 5 rounds inside the blue circle are the 31.7 grains. But what happened was, I don't have the targets available at the moment. They're upstairs in a folder. But what happened was my first 5 rounds of the ladder load that I was using for this particular load development project, the 5 rounds were literally touching each other. And it's like, so I went from 31.5, 31.7, 31.9, 32 point whatever. You get the idea of where the math is going. But anyway, so I simply went right to this from the round 3 was, I think, 31.7. Round 1 was 31 point whatever it was. Anyway, that's where I decided to go. And when I got those 7 rounds at 100 yards, and I created a group of 874 thousandths, that's an actual measured group, I decided that was good enough for a deer hunting rifle.
Yep. Yeah. It all depends on the purpose. And yeah, deer hunting, it doesn't necessarily have to be extremely so.
This is a 100. This is a 100 grain bullet, 100-day spire point, and for now, if I were going to take and be using it for ELD, extreme long distance, if I were going to try to shoot this 1,000 yards, number one, there's only a 3 to 9 by 40 scope on that particular rifle. I need better optics, so it's like, I didn't want to take and continue with any more time or waste any more time. There's nothing to be gained by it.
Yep. Okay, we got a question from Bad Bob, and he's been loading 223, and the bullets are 55 grain FMJ. They have a canalure, and he says if he seats the bullet to the canalure, it will make it under the overall size limit. And he says, is it important to seat into the canalure or seat to the proper length? Jim?
I'm sorry. I am actually trying to find his question. Hangouts on the air, video hangouts. I'm trying to find his question. Please read the question again, please.
Okay. He says, I've been loading 223, and the bullets he's using are 55 grain FMJ. They have a canalure, and if he seats the bullet to the canalure, then it makes it under the overall size. So it makes it too short, is what he's saying. He wants to know, is it important to seat into the canalure, or is it more important to seat the bullet to the proper length?
Well, it depends upon, again, the purpose of the ammunition. Are we talking plinking ammunition, or are we talking about survival ammunition? If you're going to take and load your ammunition for reliability, I would personally seat it right to the canalure, because you want your rounds to be more reliable, and you want them to fit inside the magazine. Now, if you're fitting it for a bolt gun, you have a lot more room. You can actually run it out longer. But what determines how much your ammunition is too short? If you have 100 thousandths between the nose of the bullet and the forward wall of the magazine on the inside wall, that's probably excessive. But at the same time, if you have 15 thousandths, if you have 5 thousandths, that's not enough. Somewhere between 15 and 30 thousandths between the nose of the bullet and the inside wall of the magazine, I would consider acceptable.
Yep. So the overall length on that is 2.26, and so but that's the specified overall length. Like Jim was saying, you don't necessarily have to completely worry about it being shorter than the overall length. It's the overall length that's the issue, because then it's not going to fit. You're going to change your head spacing and that type of thing. You may get that bullet out too far where it actually won't allow it. It actually sticks to the lands and grooves and doesn't allow it to seat fully, so that way when the bolt comes closed, it actually hits the primer and pre-fires the cartridge, as opposed to being seated properly.
Does that answer his question?
That is, Bad Bob, does that answer your question? Let's see here. So I know that with the 308, I have to have it fit into the magazine on my rifle, so I don't have it quite as long as I wanted it to, but it is shorter than the overall length. So, you know, it all depends on what exactly. Waiting to see if Bad Bob sends us another answer or not here. But in the meantime, let's see who we've all got viewing. So.
I'm going to try to join the group again with my computer. All right, join. I'm about to join the Hangout on the air. Okay, I just joined it, but that's just my computer. I'm actually in the podcast twice.
All right. So, yep, he just sent us back an answer that, yes, thanks, that answers the question. So, glad we could help you out on that. Yeah, and ultimately it makes a difference on how far, as Jim was saying, the biggest things that make a difference is going to be, does it fit in the magazine? And are you loading it for blinking, or are you loading it for precision? If you're loading it for precision, then what you really care about is it going to hit the rifling, or is it not going to hit the rifling? The Canalure, it's a nice tool on there for the bullets, but you will find on certain loads that it's not practical to try and seat that to be able to use the Canalure for crimping. I guess that's kind of what, the main question that he had is it more important to set it for crimping on the Canalure or not? A Canalure is a nice tool, but no, it's not absolutely necessary that you crimp to the Canalure.
Well, like the 75 grain jacket at hollow points that you can buy, or even the 90 grain bullets, most of those don't even come with a Canalure, but they still, if you're going to run them in an AR, you still have to run them at 2.26 because you've got to fit that into the magazine, which means where that bullet's got to go somewhere. It has to go down inside the cartridge. You can't tell if this is a 55 grain, I'm assuming it is, or if it's a 90 grain, because you simply can't see. But my point was, Mike, I really wanted to interrupt you about was the fact that, you said that your accuracy is dependent upon how far you are into the lands and grooves. I only want to qualify that a little bit. You might find that some rifles like it when you literally touch the lands and grooves. Some rifles might prefer you need 30 thousandths. I know one guy who swears he likes 100 thousandths jump from the cartridge case out too. That is not, Mike, you're a great guy, but you just can't make a hard and fast rule like that. Forgive me, I don't mean any discourtesy.
Oh, no, not at all. And, I just have my personal experience, and I know from setting it up, my particular rifle, setting it on the rifling is what it likes best. But, yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I'm really, really, really grateful that I got you to help me out on this and to be my co-host and leader, because you do have all that extra experience that I don't. I've only got, I've been doing it for about 6 or 7 years now, but there's a lot of stuff that I haven't come across, and that's one of those things. All the ones that I've set up for performance.
Mike, what I'm going to say is, this is one thing, if you have the time, there is a place, a resource, and here I am, my weekly plug, but there is a resource that has a vast amount of knowledge. One of our viewers tonight, he's got as much reloading experience. When he first came to me, he didn't even know how to cast, but I tell you what, he's come a long way. And but what I was going to say is a big source, a free source of knowledge, and an encyclopedic. That's all. I'm just trying to be. I can't express how much knowledge there is in the Reloading Room on Facebook. 13,000 plus members. A lot of them don't participate, but you know what? There's a lot to do, and there is just a wealth of knowledge out there.
Exactly. And that is just huge. Spend some time going back through, and you can learn a lot. And that's what I'm doing quite a bit, is going back through and reading some of the older posts and gaining that knowledge. As I said when we started this out, I don't know everything, nor will I ever claim to. So if, just like Jim does, if I say something that's a generalized statement that shouldn't be a generalized statement, call me on it. I will be more than happy to admit that I don't know everything and that maybe my opinion isn't necessarily always the best opinion. So,
like I said, I certainly don't want to be. I feel that it's more important to have the knowledge out there than it is to worry about. Well, Jim said this, so it's like it's got to be so. No, 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 no. If Jim will tell you that apples are actually purple, that doesn't mean it's right.
I'm thinking if I see a purple apple, I'm staying away from it. All right. Well, we got another good episode in after we got over our technical issues. So, once again, thank everybody for tuning in, and thank everybody who's going to be listening to the audio version of this. Once again, the Reloading Room. We can't stress it enough. A great source, great place to go, great place to find both of us. You can post on there, and we'll definitely answer it, and I can guarantee you'll also have other people that will join in and help answer. There isn't any newbie bashing. There isn't any of the, oh my goodness, how stupid are you? What the heck did you think of that idea for? Bashing or anything like that. It's all very friendly, very helpful. That's the point of the Reloading Room. And that's what we're trying to make with this podcast also, is that it's to be helpful, it's to be friendly. It's just like, two friends sitting down chatting, talking about things. And so we thank the people that tuned in tonight. And let's see if I can find out. It's not what I want. So,
Is Jason still out there?
I think so. So, I am.
I don't see
not
him.
getting the button.
I see you. I see myself twice, but I don't see Jason out there. Of course, too. Q&A.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm still learning all the controls for this, but let's see here. Anyway, yeah, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and appreciate y'all showing up. Appreciate all of the information, all the questions. And what am I looking for? There we go.
Another good podcast, Mike. It was a little rough getting started, but you know what? We're not professionals, and we don't care. It's more about the knowledge. It's more about the knowledge than it is about the polish of professionalism or so on and so forth. Yeah, that's an important point. And now we know, we learn by experience. We shut off the podcast a little bit too early, and we apologize for that. I was having a technical issue. I froze my thumbnail, as it were. I was trying to send Mike a picture, and it didn't work. It froze up my iPad. And so Mike and I closed our screens, and we both restarted our computers. And, well, Google Hangouts, because of the fact that we had it scheduled, simply postponed everything for 24 hours.
Yep. It was awful nice of them to do that for us. But once again, great episode, great information. We thank everybody for tuning in, and look forward to hearing from you over the week. By all means, get a hold of us on Google+. Jim's on Google+, I'm on Google+, Jim's on Facebook, I'm on Facebook. We've got the Reloading Room on Facebook, and then on Google+, and on Facebook, we have the Reloading Podcast, and also www.reloadingpodcast.com is the website where you can find the links. But you got any questions? Post them. We'll get them answered. Or email them. reloading@firearmsradio.tv. Once again, that's reloading@firearmsradio.tv. So once again, we thank everybody for tuning in, and y'all have a good night.
Have a good one, folks. Good night.